All right, Ben Geisler here, back with Livestream number 6 here at Aspen Saddlery. Today we're going to be talking about hot waxing edges. Now certain people out there are going to try and lead you to believe that hot waxing edges is some sort of secret European technique that's been handed down from grandmaster to grandmaster, and there's like some Vermeer out there somewhere that's teaching everyone the secrets of hot waxing. Much to the chagrin of the shoe industry that does this pretty regularly. So hot waxing isn't super complex. It's a lot easier to do if you have a fileteuse. Mine is a Crimson Hides dual handle. I believe it's the same as the Rocky Mountain unit, but any fileteuse will do. Otherwise, you can get a manual edge iron from Duane Watts, and you heat it up on a hot plate. Pay attention to your temperature, and off you go. So I'm going to be using my Crimson Hides fileteuse. Current heat setting is at about a 7. It's had time to heat soak for a while. And on it is an M5 adapter, also available from Crimson Hides. And then I have a variety of these brass custom-made heads that are threaded to M5. So you buy the adapter, you thread on whatever brass thing you need for whatever you're working on, and you have a hot wax edge iron. So the first step to hot waxing is actually just doing a water burnish on your edge. So I've got a sponge here, and I'm just going to go ahead and give this a quick rub with water and canvas to kind of pack the edge down. This is the exact same technique I start with in my belt burnishing video. So it's a couple live streams back if you want to take a look. But damp the edge. In this case, we're not going to use saddle soap. This bench is a little slippery, so I'm going to throw a shot bag on here so that it doesn't go flying off. And I'm just going to quickly polish this edge with water. No sense in making this any harder than you need to. It's as simple as using a canvas glove and working your way along the edge. When you get to the tip, you may have a little bit more luck working on it in your hand. Either way, not a huge deal. So that's pretty good. We'll get the other side done here. Then we'll get on with our waxing. For waxing, you want to use beeswax because it's got a higher melt temperature than paraffin. And you can actually add Damar resin to it to increase the melt temperature further. Of course, the big thing here is you want to give your leather a nice hot waxed edge and not scorch it. And it is reasonably easy to scorch if you get it too hot. So it's always handy to have a test piece of leather around. You can put a little wax on so that you can check and make sure that you're not too far out of line. There are certain people on the internet that are super guilty of just cooking the crap out of their edges. And you can tell when you look at the work, the edges should be a nice dark color. The edges shouldn't be, black. You shouldn't have like a bacon-like appearance. You're not trying to carbonize your edges. You're trying to burnish them or edge wax them, right? So just a word of caution, you can definitely overdo this. So do pay attention. And my water burnish is nearly done. I could have done this actually before I started the video, but I wanted you guys to be able to see it one more time. This is one of my favorite burnishing techniques. It is as simple as having a bench to work with and having canvas and water available to you. And if you wanted to, you could just go with wax right here instead of, just wax and friction right here instead of going on to hot wax. So now that I've got a nice edge foundation, show you what we've got here. Okay, you can see I've already got a really nice edge built up here, right? But we want more. So how do we get it? All right, well, step on beeswax. I buy beeswax by the pound from these guys that have honey farms. And then I remelt it into sizes I can use. It is much, much cheaper than buying wax from really anybody. Well, except bee farmers. What I'm going to do here is liberally apply a coat of wax to the belt edge here. You want to be kind of careful that you don't run it all the way over off the side. It's not fatal if you do, but beeswax is a pretty good sealer, and if you get a bunch of it where it doesn't belong, you stand a decent chance of melting it where it doesn't belong, and it's not doing the appearance any favors. So, and what I'll typically do is melt in a couple of coats of wax, and then I will polish in the final coat. This really isn't necessary unless you're making something that dictates it. It's a little more juice for a lot more squeeze. But, we live in an age of unnecessary adjectives. You can't buy a sandwich without it being hand sliced or artisan made or free range or whatever it is. So, if you want to add hot wax to your edges, this is how you would do that. So, all right. Got my first coat of wax on here. Iron is hot. Now we're just going to take the iron here, and you'll notice I've got a pretty big radius on it. If you press this straight into the side, it's not actually going to get your edge bevel. So you've got to be pretty careful, and you're going to want to rotate it in so that you get that bevel. And I'll show you what we're getting here in just a second. This isn't something that is easily sort of switched while working. I'm going to throw my shop bag on the end here so I don't pull the whole strap off the bench and continue. Now this wax will melt at different rates. It will it'll darken in some places, more than others. And so you have to kind of move this iron fairly quickly, but you have to try and keep it uniform. And that's really the hardest thing about hot waxing, is just getting good uniformity without burning things. And part of that is having enough wax on the edge. Part of that is figuring out the right temperature that works for you. There's not really, it's not a luck involved process. This is one of those things that you invest in yourself. You spend the time figuring it out so that it's a tool that when you need it, you've got it. And you can really go your entire career without hot waxing anything ever, in the same way that you can go your whole career without wet molding anything ever if you don't want to. It's a specialized technique, but you'll find that in certain circles it's pretty prevalent, and really there's not a lot to it, as you can see. So I'll flip this blank over and make sure that I've waxed in the lower radius. and then I will reapply. I'll show you what it looks like after the first pass here in just a second. Okay. So your first pass, so you can see, if this camera's focus will catch up, you'll see that it's a little bit darker, not quite as glossy, not quite as shiny, and you know, but you've got the color that you want. So that's really where we're going with this. And same thing as with a burnish. If you don't flip it and iron the bottom, you're going to have a line where that wax is that isn't melted, and you can't get away from it. You've got to go in there and take care of it. Same thing, we flip it around. So this is our first course of wax. And this is melting the wax and just getting it down into the fibers, getting it into the edge. Truthfully, I don't know how much more durable the edge is. It creates a nicer initial edge, but in terms of wear, you know, like anything burnish, you're going to have to go back and reestablish that burnish periodically. You know, even with the most packed, sanded, waxed edge, I mean, sooner or later it's going to break down. So, you know, if you're looking at this thinking you found a silver bullet and you'll never have to reburnish anything ever, you know, you're going to have to find something else to kill your werewolves with. All right, so there's the first course of wax, top and bottom. You can see on the bottom side now, if we can get there, that the color's evened out. And that's what we wanted. So we'll melt in the second course of wax. You can hold it right side up, upside down, doesn't really matter. You know, you just want to use whatever that doesn't really get it too deep into the belt edge. Again, I mean, we want to focus on keeping the melty stuff where the melty stuff goes. Seems like common sense. Should be common sense. Common sense is less common than you might think. So what happens when you get wax elsewhere on your belt? Well, it depends on how bad it is. But if it's not real bad, you can generally polish it out. If you get a lot on there, you know, in a perfect world, you've already put your finish on this, and hopefully it won't be too noticeable. But if you haven't, when you go to put your finish on there, it's going to adhere differently to where the wax is than where the wax is not. And that's going to create a whole new subset of problems. So, you know, I'm not going to say this is an advanced technique. It's only advanced in the sense that your patience needs to be a little bit more advanced, you know, to do it. Now, this iron tip has been heat soaking for probably, I would suspect, maybe like 20 minutes now. And it's about as hot as it's going to get. But if you leave this fileteuse, you know, if you crank it up to 7, walk out of the room and come back in an hour, you're going to burn what you're working on. So this isn't a set it and forget it. You know, it's not like the crock pot of leather tools. Although I do have a couple of crock pots on the bench. This is one that requires a little bit of minding. Once again, keeping it moving. Trying to get the most even melt that I can. And it'll give it a nice appearance. Sometimes it's a little bit variegated, which, you know, if you want it to look like it was made by a machine, this is a pretty difficult technique to get away with. But if you want a really nice hand rubbed edge finish, see, I just did it with the adjectives. I mean, I'm guilty of it myself. You know, this will give you a really nice finish. So this is the second course. We're melting it into place. And then the third course, we'll wax and just polish by hand. If you are using wax with Damar resin mixed in to make it melt at a higher temperature, you're going to find that hand polish to be very difficult. So just keep in mind that, you know, in the same way that paraffin's quite a bit easier than beeswax to polish, Damar resin beeswax is, or Damar maybe, I don't know. I've never heard it said out loud, right? I'm not that type of artist. Anyway, you'll find that the relationship is the same going the other direction. So beeswax with resin in it is going to be that much harder, you know, to build heat and get a nice edge. So all right, so that's the second coat. We're going to go ahead and turn the iron off, set it aside. I would encourage you to turn your iron off and unplug it as soon as you get done with it, because leaving things on overnight is just inviting disaster. Okay, so here's your second coat. You'll notice it's darker. It's definitely got a more glazed kind of appearance to it. And now we run it through the wax and then give it a good polish, and we should be finished with this strap. I say should, you know, you can always go back and do more, but there's also a limit to how much you can do within reason, right? For every additional hour I spend fussing over the edges of this belt, I'm not getting paid any more money. And the customer's not going to be any happier. So it's just not a great deal for everybody involved. So I'm going to go here. And on this polish, I like to actually put the glove on my left hand and just pull the strap through. I find that for a final slicking or a polish like this, it's a little bit better than laying it on the bench. I can't tell you why it is. I think it probably builds a little bit more heat, but you can feel how tacky this is too. A lot of times it'll take several pulls to even get it to start moving. I mean, on the other hand, that's a good sign, because that means you definitely got enough wax in the edge. There are other edge treatments you can use if you want a different feel. Bone glue or hide glue can be pretty glassy. Oxalic acid can be very, very hard. A wax finish, I think, for everyday use is a good way to go. You know, whether that's a hot wax finish like I've just done, or just a regular one, you know, it doesn't really matter. You know, for that matter, water and then toconol is really good. I've tried CMC, and I haven't got a grasp on CMC to the point where I'm comfortable using it and happy with the results. All right, and probably get this a little bit. All right, so I might be able to polish this one more time. We'll actually go here so you can kind of see it. Right, so it's got a darker, kind of more subtle look than you know, than a regular burnish does. But I think it creates a nice finished product. And if you have the tools or you have the time, it's definitely worth doing. If you say, hey, how do I get one of these? Okay, there's a guy, his name is Duane Watts. He sells this, and it's normally on the end of a stick, like a lollipop. And you can just heat that up on a hot plate. You can heat it over an alcohol burner, not a regular burner, or it'll get sooty. You heat it up over a burner and you do exactly what I do. It's more laborious because you're constantly reheating your iron, but it's totally manageable in the same way that you'd use a shoe iron, okay? So this technique doesn't have to be out of reach if it's something that you want to do. I want to say these things are 40 or 50 bucks. But conversely, like every leather tool is 40 or 50 bucks. So it's just kind of the price of admission. As you can see, I have multiple ones. And I've got one on the iron too. So I've got 3 or 4 of these things. And if you get a Crimson Hides adapter tip, you can literally use about any brass shape that you want. So if you find that you've got a specific edge radius that you like to work with, if you've got, you know, you can even get them to do like the insides of belt slots. There's a lot of things you can do. So, you know, so that's where you're at. Anyway, hopefully this has been useful to you. Hopefully you're a little bit less mystified by hot wax finishing, and it's something that you can integrate into your own work. And I hope you're having an awesome day, have an awesome weekend, and get back to work. You know, do the work. Anyway, I appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much for your support. I will continue to put out videos if you continue to watch them. So that's what I got for today. Have a good one.